when we eat a steak, we're not just getting protein, we're getting a package deal. We're getting the IGF-1, which is correlated with cancer, and cholesterol, which is correlated with heart disease. Compare that to plants, and you get things like fiber, which fill you up, and phytonutrients, which have been shown to be protective against cancer. Now, none of us are rats, so what does this really mean for us? Well, if we look at a national examination survey, we see very similar things in people. So humans consuming 20% higher animal protein just after midlife, over the next 2 decades, 75% increase in overall mortality, 4 times the cancer deaths, 5 times the deaths from type 2 diabetes. Again, statistics do not hold if the protein is plant-derived. So let's play a game. What's the similarity between the only shampoo I thought there was growing up, American Cookouts, one of my favorite items, breakfast, what we all got as children to prevent tears, and our late night snacks. Anyone want to guess? Yes.
They're all animal, byproducts.
That's a good guess. 3 of them are. But they all contain class 1 carcinogens, things known to promote cancer growth in humans, things like plutonium and cigarette smoke. Now, we're not on Netflix watching What the Health. This isn't some kind of hippie propaganda. You can find this list at cancer.org, in which I highly encourage you to do so. You should probably know what you're exposing yourself to. Again, we're getting exposed to carcinogens, and we have high animal protein diets, and we're seeing higher cancer rates. Well, this is the first question I always get when I start talking about plant-based diets, as if the second you stop eating animals, you're just going to wither away and float away on the sky like a kite or something. So let's talk about protein. Protein was discovered in 1840 by a Dutch chemist who named it after the Greek word proteos, meaning of prime importance. Now, when you're taught you are what you eat, why would you not want to eat as much of something that will make you of prime importance? So, what is a protein? Does anyone know what you call an acid with an attitude problem?
Amino acid.
Amino acid. I love it. So here we see an amino acid. It has this amine or nitrogen-containing group and a carboxylic acid group, amino acid. These amino acids combine into chains known as peptides, which then fold in on themselves because of electrostatic forces, making the complex proteins that make life possible. Okay? How many do we need? About 20. 9 of them are known as essential amino acids because they must come from our diet. The rest, our body rearranges things to make. Where do we get them? Well, here's where we all get our protein. From plants. Okay, you can argue against this, but only plants have the ability to pull nitrogen from the air and fix it into those amine groups we just saw. So much so that when you eat animal protein, you're just getting recycled plant protein. All right? Think about it. You told me I needed a cow because it has big muscles, so I can form big muscles. What did the cow eat? Grass. Doesn't make sense. So, right? This stuff is not too complex. So how much protein do you actually need? You need about 0.83 grams per kilogram per day. As most of us aren't English scientists, what does this mean? Take your body weight divided by 2.2, multiplied by 0.83, and for a young healthy male like myself, I need about 60 grams of protein. Where do you find it? You can find it in 1 block of tempeh and 1 can of beans, which will set you back about $3. Both of these are organic, by the way. It's a good deal. So, I'm assuming that you didn't come in here today thinking like, oh, I wonder about heart disease, I wonder about cancer. You know, you're probably more concerned about things like your mood, or your complexion, or your weight, or if you have uterus, menstruation. And also, asthma and diabetes can significantly complicate things. So let's talk about depression. Now, depression is something that should always be taken seriously, because at times it can lead to suicide, which is our 13th leading killer, which kills as many people as breast cancer. Now, this year alone, 13 million Americans will suffer from depression, a large portion being college students. So let someone know if you're suffering. We have great counseling services. Now, is there a diet associated with a healthier mood state? Well, when you compare omnivores versus vegetarians on the profile of moods, or what moods are they experiencing, or depression and anxiety scores, you see that vegetarians not only experience significantly fewer negative emotions, but they have a better mood overall. And they also experience more vigor, indicating that yes, a plant-based diet is associated with a healthier mood. Well, if a plant-based diet is associated with a healthier mood, is an omnivorous diet associated with worse mood? Turns out it might be, because omnivores have 9 times more arachidonic acid, which is an omega-6 pro-inflammatory acid, right? The top sources being chicken and eggs. What's the problem with that? The problem is that it's associated with higher rates of both depression and suicide. Now, if you take an omnivore, remove all their flesh foods for just 2 weeks, you see a significant improvement in mood, indicating for those of us who have a propensity towards depression, again, a plant-based diet could be protective. Now, you didn't think you were going to get out of here without a little neuroscience, did you? Let's talk about one of the leading theories to depression, the monoamine theory, which states that depression arises as a chemical imbalance in the brain. These chemicals are neurotransmitters, and they're the things that our neurons, the cells in our brains, some of them, use to communicate, okay? So one neuron will release its neurotransmitters into this area between the cells, the synapse, because they don't actually touch. These can then bind, causing their effect, like promoting sleep. Now, the thing is that they don't stay here forever, okay? They get taken back up into the first cell, which is where we get things like SSRIs, or Prozac, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. But this isn't the primary lowering process. The primary lowering process is thought to be monoamine oxidase, which is an enzyme which kind of chews up those neurotransmitters so that they can't have their effect. Depressed individuals, about 30% more of this enzyme in every brain region they measured. So you have elevated monoamine oxidase, chewing up more of your neurotransmitters, probably leading to a chemical imbalance. Well, what do we do about it? Nature provided us a solution. Plants contain things that actually inhibit monoamine oxidase to certain levels. Have 8 servings of more fruits and vegetables a day, you may decrease your odds of depression by 62%. Now, 8 sounds like a lot, but if you have a salad and an apple, you're already halfway there. Let's talk about a really big problem we face, obesity. Would anyone like to guess what percentage of US adults are not just overweight, but obese?
60?
Oh, so you got really close. 40% of people are obese. I'll give you something later. 40% of people are obese. Now, combined being overweight, we see that 70% of our adult population has a weight issue, okay? It's actually most prevalent in minorities. Now, when 50% of any population has a weight problem, we need to be seriously concerned. We need to start asking questions, like, when did this happen and why? Well, here's about the time I was born. You can see that we're pushing about 10% of our population being obese. This is obesity, not overweight. Fast forward 10 years, we see we're pushing 20%, 10 more years, 30%, 10 more years, and we have states in purple here, the purple indicating that there's a 35% or higher obesity rate. Now, if we don't do anything, we continue on our diet, what is it going to look like in a few more years? Here's my estimate. Okay, no one ever laughs at that. I think that's pretty so, the problem with obesity is that it's unsustainable at every level you examine it at. In just one decade, the medical cost, of obesity, I don't own that image, but it's great. The medical cost of obesity doubled from 70 billion to almost 150 billion. We don't have the ability to sustain this. It will break us eventually. Now, not only that, but it's more expensive to the individual. If you're obese, you probably spend about $1,500 more per year in medical costs alone. When you see that it's associated with a lower income, you start to wonder whether or not it's a form of oppression. Now, obesity is something that needs to be treated because scientifically, if it's not, it will result in a shorter lifetime with more health problems. The good news, obesity is a temporary treatable condition. Take it from me, someone who's been on both sides. In this case, the grass is tastier. So what is a treatment? Does anyone want to guess what a good treatment is? Whole food plant-based diet works. You can lose up to 2 to 5 pounds in just 2 weeks, 10 pounds in about a month. Sign up for a year and you can lose 25 pounds. Why? Well, so we see from this study that those eating less flesh foods or meat actually have a lower BMI. Now, this is the only group that's actually at a healthy weight because once you get over 25, you're overweight. So, when you look at this and you see non-vegetarian, I don't want you to think the normal American, because it's not. This was done in Seventh-day Adventists, which are the nutritional researchers' dream come true. They're an organized group that doesn't smoke, doesn't drink, has a great familial support, and should sustain from flesh foods. They're good at the first few. So this is actually someone eating meat a few times a week, possibly not even every day, and we still see this result. Well, when I was fat, I was told that it was because I exercised too little and ate too much, which is a behavioral explanation, which allows the system to label you both a glutton and a sloth, which takes the blame off them and puts it onto you. Now, is this the reality? No, it's not. The reality is that we live in a toxic environment, as I learned from my environmental scientist. We live in a plague of processed food, which is void of fiber, so you keep eating and you never get full in the same individual. Well, this results in a hormonal imbalance, which causes you to eat too much and exercise too little, which leaves you obese because it's been the food all along. So we should stop blaming ourselves. Yeah. So why does a plant-based diet work? Well, because people tend to eat the same bulk of food in a meal, regardless of the caloric content. This is because your stomach doesn't contain calorie receptors. What it does contain are stretch receptors. So when you eat a bulk of fibrous foods, you fill up your stomach, stretches it out, produces a few calories. Stretch receptor sends a signal sends a signal to the brain saying, I'm full, we can stop. Do this a couple times a day and you're still under the calories that they tell you to eat. Where does that fiber come from? Here we see an animal cell and a plant cell. One of the key differences being the cell wall, which is made of complex carbohydrates we know as fiber. Compare that to the membrane of an animal cell, and we see it contains cholesterol. So plants have fiber, which fill you up. Animal cells have cholesterol, which, as we saw before, increases your chances of heart disease. Fiber, full, heart disease. Makes sense. So I would say that we should correct the biology first and the behavior will follow. This is what I do in my research. When you have an animal that's not responding the way it should, you can look into its biology and see something's wrong. You can correct it as Tommy does every day. And we see that the behavior changes, okay? So those eating plant-based actually burn about 11% more calories per hour after each meal. And this is because what you eat does have an effect on your genes. Epigenetic changes result in more of an enzyme, something that performs a process. So then you burn more calories while eating less calories, so naturally you're going to lose weight. All right. So macronutrients. Bros love their macros. I hear this all the time. Where do you get your macros? What's the ideal ratio? Well, Institute of Medicine and World Health Organization agree that you should have about 10 to 20% of your calories from protein. Get it from plants. 50 to 75% of your calories from carbohydrates, the things we're all taught to avoid, that's a conflicting message, and 15 to 30% from fats. Where do we find these exact ratios? Plants! We got it. Isn't that funny how the things that we evolved eating have the exact things that we need? What a bizarre concept. So, what is a calorie? Nothing more than a unit of energy. Carbohydrate is a macronutrient or a biological molecule consisting of a carbon backbone and hydroxyl groups. Carbohydrate. Now what we see here is that white crystalline poison we call sugar, which has a molecule of glucose, which we directly use to make ATP or cellular energy, and a molecule of fructose, which is the sweet part. It's the part of sugar that makes us crave it. So we do this thing in America that might not be the best idea, and we separate the two, concentrating fructose. Now, the issue with this is that when you smack your liver with high levels of fructose, day after day, it has a hard time and it can't take it. So it starts producing very low density lipoproteins, which starts spitting out little fats, which then turn your liver fatter, which then cause your arteries to clog. So don't believe those commercials where the woman's out there on her farm. She's like, I give my kids sweet tea with fructose. Mom, please don't do that. It's false advertising. So let's talk about diabetes. Would anyone like to guess what number of Americans suffer from diabetes currently? 20 million. Great guess. About 20 million. A very small percent of it being directly genetic. Now I would argue that we can look at the data and see that it's not all genes, because there's 3 times more than there was 30 years ago. I mean, I'm not growing extra arms or hair back, so it's not really genes. There's about 1 million new cases each year. The issue with this is that almost 50% of them are children. Now, when a child gets type 2 diabetes, you can take about 15 to 20 years off their life expectancy. No parent would want that. And I bring this up because if nothing is done, it's estimated that 1/3 of the people in this room will be diabetic by mid-century. Okay, here's why we should be concerned. Do I have anyone with great balance? Dr. Lavender's a dancer. Oh, Dr. Lavender, come stand up.
Yay!
All right. So
The floor's kind of wonky though, I don't know. You want me to stand up here?
So yeah, let's go stand up here.
Okay, this is nerve-wracking.
So stand on one leg for me. One leg. Diabetes is the #1 cause of lower limb amputations. Close your eyes. #1 cause of blindness, and you can sit back down because you need dialysis. Your kidneys fail. All right. So that's why we should be concerned, because this is a serious disease, and it's not something we should joke about along with Holly Dean. Now, we have the ability to examine muscle cells. We can literally image them and see what's on the inside. And when you compare those eating meat-heavy diets compared to people not eating meat-heavy diets of the same weight with no diabetes, we see a difference. We see that the people eating meat-based diets have a lot of fat in their cell. They also have the mitochondria, which are going to produce the ATP. Outside the cell, we have insulin, which is a hormone, and glucose, all right? Remember the hydroxyl groups I showed you earlier? Those don't have even distributions of electrons, so they're polar, which means that glucose can't enter the cell without help. Insulin has to bind, causing a series of reactions within the cell, which then allows glucose to come in. Everything's working great at this point. But what we do is we do this thing where we keep eating the same diet. We have bacon and eggs for breakfast, depositing more fat within our cells, and then we have a hamburger with cheese and french fries and a milkshake, and then a steak, and then as plant-based people, olive oil and extra virgin olive oil. Olive oil is fat too. And now insulin binds, but it can't exert its effect because the reactions can't take place. So glucose can't get in, so you have a rise in blood sugar because of insulin insensitivity. So we've always said it's the sugar, and we're right. The sugar is a symptom, but it's not the disease itself in most cases. That's what happened to us because we eat lean meat like chicken. That might have been true about 100 years ago because a single serving of chicken had about 2 grams of fat. Fast forward 100 years and we got this mammoth. Same serving of chicken, 23 grams of fat. 10 times more than what it previously had. You are what you eat, so what's the result of eating obesity? Could it be obesity? Could it be fat in our cells? We'll find out. So what about milk? You go to the store and you get your 2% or low-fat milk, okay? This is what they give us a nutrition label in, which is sneaky because 89% of it is water, but it has 2 grams of fat, so they call it 2% milk. If we redid it how our body recognizes it, we'll see a different picture. 35% of the calories are from fat. Okay? So we could relabel it more accurately, 35% fat milk. Sounds delicious. So what if we did this thing where we took something that's meant to turn a small animal into a big animal in just a matter of months, and we concentrated it, turning into this thing that we all love. We put it on this, what do we get? This. So we see that we're actually consuming less sweeteners, but our obesity rates are skyrocketing, our diabetes rates are skyrocketing. Just putting that out there. So here's some trends we're seeing. Diabetes skyrocketing again. It's not genetic. And we're also consuming far more chicken. This is when I get my first talk. Now, we see again from our lovely Seventh-day Adventist that the less meat you eat, the lower your chances of becoming type 2 diabetic. Again, vegans virtually eliminate their chances of becoming type 2 diabetic, even at the same weight as your peers. I mean, it's correlation, but if there's enough smoke, I'd leave the room. This is because plant-based diets accomplish two things. They lower the sugar, which is what we're all taught to do, which is right. Lower your sugar. You don't want your blood to clog. But it lowers the fat, which allows those cells to unclog, which results in better insulin sensitivity, better blood sugar levels, because the cells that make the insulin themselves, your pancreatic beta cells, are healthier. What about asthma? Now, asthma can really complicate life. It can make life difficult, as it did for these individuals. About half of them had been hospitalized recently. They were taking about 5 medications each. Put them on a 1-year whole food plant-based diet. As a side note, this is the only one I found that said pesticide-free. So all those results that we saw may not have been pesticide-free. So if you can afford it, get it. If not, you'll still get results. 4 months later, 71% improvement in asthmatic symptoms. After a year, 92% improvement. Less asthma attacks, less severe attacks, better lung capacity, decreased blood pressure, annoying things like arthritis went away. Now, as the asthma management tells us, a management plan is key. Well, I would argue that plant-based diet is a pretty good one. Now, I don't have a uterus, but what I do have are 2 sisters and 2 mothers and a beautiful girlfriend, and I've seen that menstruation can be quite painful at times. What is the solution? Well, if you put women on a plant-based diet for 2 cycles, just 2 months, and you see that they lose about 6 pounds, their painful menstruation days decrease from 4 days to 3. While a day might not seem a lot, when you're watching someone hunch you over in pain, eating chocolate ice cream, it probably is. Now, not only that, but it decreased their premenstrual symptoms, like abdominal pain and concentration. The women liked it so much that this was a crossover design. So they were supposed to eat the experimental diet for 2 cycles and then go back to their normal diet and take a pill. They refused. Now, I was also a medical assistant for a while in dermatology, and from what I saw was that most people suffer from acne, even into adulthood, okay? Now, I never saw acne go away faster than removing dairy. So, is this true?
It is very true.
Okay, so I didn't know why there's my plants. I didn't know why at the time, but now I do. I read these studies. So, this is the theory. You drink milk or consume dairy, which comes from a lactating cow, so it's full of sex hormones, which increase your own sex hormones. Now, when you have a higher levels, it causes your skin to produce more oil or sebum, all right, which attracts bacteria. The bacteria love it because it's quite nourishing, so they then colonize your pores, producing inflammation known as zits. It may not be such a coincidence that that looks a lot like what comes out of that. Now, this is because plant-based diets attack acne from the inside, unlike all those expensive creams we've been buying. So people tell me all the time, Justin, I can never be vegetarian or vegan. Okay, cool, don't. So a vegetarian diet contains our #1 source of dietary fats, saturated fats, and cholesterol, and still spikes your IGF-1. I love you vegans, but all you're telling me is what you don't eat. I don't eat animal products, which does not directly translate into a healthy diet, because Oreos don't contain animal products. Not quite healthy. Now, also, it's debatable whether or not you see an increase in longevity and decrease in disease states from being 93% plant-based to 100%. So if you gotta have a steak on your birthday, do it. Don't let perfect be the enemy of good. Make every step you can in the right direction. It took me months and weeks to get it done. Focus on what you can have, not what you can't have. What you can have is a healthy, well-functioning, well-nourished body. So what's the point of all this? Why did I just rant at you for 45 minutes? The point is that this stack of studies, the ones we've seen today, and many more, I did knock over the shoulder, Jessica, and many more suggests that, you know what, you may not have to die of heart disease. That obesity, type 2 diabetes, and dementia may not just be inevitable consequences of aging. Not only that, but these diseases are crippling us. They're increasing and increasing, and it's going to break our medical system. It's going to break our society if we don't do anything. So it's up to us to make a change to the only sustainable diet for humanity at this time. Whole food, plant-based diet. So let's make a change. That's all I got for you.